Hey folks, my name is Brian and welcome back to Poli Tic Talks. So in today's video, I want to talk about the fact that Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, announced that she would be resigning. I'm going to be talking about some of the people that are thought to be the logical replacement for her, as well as what it means for British politics and Brexit in particular going forward. But before we get into the meat of this week's video, I want to make a quick reference to last week's video I made on the results of the election in Newfoundland and Labrador. I pinned this correction to the top of the comments section as well as in the description of the video, but I just want to say it verbally so everyone clearly knows that I made an error in reporting on the facts in last week's video. So, in reference to the two independent members of the House of Assembly that won their seats in the Newfoundland and Labrador election, I reported that Paul Lane and Eddie Joyce were involved in the bullying and harassment scandal that saw them removed from the Liberal caucus. That is not 100% accurate. The bullying and harassment scandal applied to Eddie Joyce and Dale Kirby. Mr. Joyce won his seat again in the last election. Mr. Kirby decided not to run again. But the important thing here is that Paul Lane was not involved in that scandal. So with that out of the way, let's move into this week's video. On May 24th, Theresa May delivered a speech announcing that she would be resigning as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. She did not resign immediately. She instead opted to stay on as Prime Minister until a new leader could be chosen. She said that she would resign as Prime Minister on June 7th. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who is the head of the opposition, sent out a tweet saying that he thought that it was the right thing for Theresa May to do, to resign as Prime Minister, while other members of Theresa May's Conservative Party sent out tweets of support saying what a great job she'd done as Prime Minister and how much they had supported her. In terms of Theresa May's legacy, I think she will probably not be remembered kindly by history. And in determining her legacy, I think there will be two main factors that come into play. The first factor is that she took over as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during one of the most politically difficult times for any Prime Minister in the last few years, certainly. The previous Prime Minister, David Cameron, had promised during his election that he would hold a referendum on whether or not the UK would stay within the European Union. During the campaign for this referendum, Mr. Cameron campaigned very hard to remain within the European Union, and when the referendum did not go that way, he resigned because he did not believe he was the one to lead the country when they had chosen a direction that he didn't think was the right one to do, so he resigned. And that's when Mrs. May took over. With an intensely divided society, and more importantly, an intensely divided parliament, Prime Minister May made several attempts to push through legislation simply to move the ball forward with carrying out the objective from the referendum, which was to separate the United Kingdom from the European Union. Her aim seemed to be, while working to obtain the objective of some sort of separation between the United Kingdom and the European Union, she wanted to avoid what's being known as a no-deal Brexit. And what this entails is the United Kingdom negotiate individual trade agreements before separating from the European Union. This is going to become an important piece of information for the second half of this video. Even the most gifted legislators would have extreme difficulty getting that sort of a nuanced piece of legislation through a House of Commons that is so divided as the one we're currently seeing in the United Kingdom. Which brings me to the second factor in considering Theresa May's legacy in the future. I fully believe that Prime Minister May is an extremely intelligent woman. With that being said, I don't think she was a particularly strong leader or a gifted Prime Minister because she didn't have the ability to connect to huge amounts of people, which was seriously important when trying to push unpopular or politically risky legislation through the House. She was constantly being accused in the media of being very rigid, cold, unreachable by the average person. Unfortunately, in the modern age, most political leaders have to be part celebrity, and Theresa May, I don't believe, was that at all. And now comes the question of who will eventually become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. As of right now, the leadership race for the Conservative Party hasn't even begun, and the odds-on favorite to win that race and become the next Prime Minister is Boris Johnson. Working under the assumption that he is the most likely person to succeed Theresa May as Prime Minister, I'm going to be providing a bit of analysis on what that might mean for the Brexit debate. So first of all, let me introduce Mr. Johnson a little bit. He was Theresa May's Foreign Secretary, and he was also the Mayor of London, elected twice. He was also one of the popular faces of the Leave campaign during the referendum. He was one of the, quote, Brexiteers inside the Conservative Party, and some of the others include Jacob Rees-Mogg, Nigel Farage, obviously. And Boris Johnson, among other people, have always lobbied for a no-deal Brexit, which earlier in this video. If the UK crashes out of the European Union without re-establishing trade deals, they will have to renegotiate with every single member state of the European Union. This would likely have profound effects on the British pound as well as the euro, which is the universal currency used within the European Union. With that being said, even if Boris Johnson becomes the next Prime Minister of the UK, he still has to contend with an extremely divided House of Commons. So it's my considered opinion that no matter who becomes the new leader of the Conservative Party and the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, they're still not going to be able to push any drastic legislation through because they have to fight with so many different competing interests in the House of Commons. I think the best thing to do at this point is to call a general election. Even though Theresa May attempted this maneuver and called a general election in an attempt to strengthen her bargaining position in the House of Commons, this eventually backfired because they called an election, they campaigned for it, and the majority that the Conservatives held essentially stayed the same. It actually got a little bit smaller. With that being said, I think if one of the parties, possibly the Labour Party, possibly not, if one of these groups ran on a platform of remaining within the European Union, with all of the conversation that's been going back and forth on Brexit since the referendum, I think they would do very well. That's why I think the independent group that formed a few months back was an extremely significant development in British politics. Anyway, guys, that's my take on the resignation of Theresa May. If you like what you heard in this video, please feel free to like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.